Hello and welcome back. I'm Kyle and I'm sitting here with Steve Patrick, a Nashville studio trumpet player and owner and developer of Patrick Mouthpieces. Steve, how's it going?
It's going great, Kyle. Thanks.
Good, good. Thanks for taking the time and sitting down with us again today. Today we're sort of talking about the kind of trumpet player that finds themselves playing in a lot of community orchestras or finds themselves doing church services and wedding. Perhaps a trumpet player who has really put in a lot of hours on the horn and has really developed their playing to a very high level, but maybe it's not their full-time job. Maybe they've got a day job or something else like this. And they've gotten a spot in these community orchestras, which, by the way, are getting good. Some of these community orchestras are playing very serious literature. They're sounding great. And with that comes sort of like some professional expectations on trumpet players. They're playing stuff that's hard. We're playing Le Maire and Tchaik 4 and American in Paris and the Firebird. I mean, these real pieces of really phenomenal orchestral lit, but they've got a day job. They've got all this other stuff to do, and maybe they don't have 5 hours a day to get their chops ready for a performance in a month. So just kind of roughly starting off with that, what would you say to these players? What is it that you do when you're having to play this sort of rep and sort of even do a little bit of this work yourself? What sort of advice when it comes to equipment and horns can you give to those kind of players?
Well, it's interesting because the player that's a freelance player that doesn't have an established orchestral job is if they're working enough to make a living, they're working nonstop. And so it's almost a direct correlation. We're working so much that it's killing our chops because we're playing too much. And the weekend warrior that, is quite possibly an incredible player that played all the way through college and got a music degree and is, the first person that people think of to play a church service or a wedding or the community orchestra, they're not playing as much anymore. So it's almost like we meet in the same place for different reasons. And so I recommend something maybe a little bit smaller for the weekend warrior if they can physically play on it. Right. Again, it's like fitting a shoe on your foot. You've got to fit it to the right size. It's the same thing with the mouthpiece. But you want that overall cup volume. So this is a 3C cup volume that you're getting, but I might even play my 7.1B, which is a 1B underpart, my 1B underpart. But we're not going crazy with the drill size. This is a 27, and the idea is to be able to switch back and forth between horns and different mouthpieces depending on what you're needing to do. And when you keep that drill size 28, 27 in that range, it makes it much easier to switch. Once you open that up, it's instant gratification. It gives you a great sound, but it can make it very difficult to be switching around equipment. Sure. So let me play something that's taxing that I might pick up E flat trumpet instead of C trumpet.
Okay.
And so on. But like if I play that on C, go ahead.
Yeah, what would cause you to pick E flat over C for something like that?
Fear. Fear of running out of chops.
Okay, sure.
And so, community orchestras, we play outside. After post-COVID, we're going to be playing outside more and more.
Yeah.
So you're playing a concert outside. It's really humid. It's really hot. Some people are pitchy around you. It's all sorts of things, all variables that you don't have inside in a perfect situation. All of a sudden, you're running out of chops. Maybe you had to rehearse before it, and now you're straight into the concert. That I would be looking for places to play a bigger mouthpiece, but a smaller horn. Okay. You still have that security of not chipping notes as much, but you still have a big sound because you're using a bigger mouthpiece.
Gotcha.
But if I had to play that on C trumpet, this is a smaller inner diameter, but it's still a 3C cup. And same thing, if I was sitting in an orchestra with everything perfect around me, I'd be playing this on a bigger mouthpiece.
Sure.
But if I played, 20 minutes a day, 4 days a week, and I'm nervous, and we're rehearsing right before the concert, and we're outside, no question about it, I'm looking for the first sure thing. I'm not going to be one of those YouTube recordings that everybody's sharing. You know?
Right.
But if that's the situation, I might play it on C with just a little bit smaller mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
You know, and people don't realize enough, you want a full sound, you want the right colors in your sound.
Right.
But you want to play in tune, and you want to be able to make it to the end, and you want to not split a bunch of notes, and you still got to finish the rest of the concert, even on a piece like that that's so difficult physically to get through.
Right.
And so you're thinking, okay, it's better off thinking I've got people underneath me supporting. I've got those overtones from their sound.
Yep.
So when we're classical majors in college and we're in our practice room or living room and we're like, we need this huge bombastic sound. That's all great.
Yeah.
But now go into real life where you're struggling to make it through and you don't have as much time to practice. What's the reality of what's going to get the job done? And so what you perceive in your living room may not be reality 30 feet out front outside,
Right.
you know, or 30 feet out front inside with a full group. So you need to have a bigger picture of how it's all going to fit together.
Right. And if playing all the classical rep that these community orchestras have to play now isn't hard enough, we're also having the experience of a lot of community orchestras, just like the big orchestras, the professional orchestras, playing a lot of pops concerts, right? For better or for worse, it puts people in the seats. It's great music, but it's demanding, especially for the brass and the trumpet players, because it's a lot of commercial influences on that music. How would you sort of help out the weekend warrior community orchestra player, having now finally just got through Firebird? Now they've got to play Gershwin's American in Paris or West Side Story or something like that. How would you shift? How would you pivot? What horns would you use? Can Mouthpiece help you? Those sorts of things.
Mouthpiece can help a lot. Yeah, I mean, and it's definitely cheaper than buying a horn.
Sure.
First thing I would say is that, you want your equipment to be cohesive, not only mouthpiece-wise, so that's why I'm always recommending people play, if they're playing my equipment, I give them a range of equipment for their classical and their pops or their commercial stuff to use, because you want to keep the same shape backboard. You want to keep a similar drill. You want to keep as many similarities as you can. Ironically, everybody thinks that needs to be the rim and the cup, and those are the least important, in my opinion, to keep the same. Now, does it freak out your chops a little bit to play something different? Yeah, but what makes it feel even worse is that difference in resistance. And this is your first thing of resistance, is that drill size and that backbore shape, along with the venturi. So, all of my horns are fairly cohesive. They all have Blackburn bells on them. Personally, I love that sound. But the venturis are very similar. I have a Blackburn large bore C trumpet, but I have a smaller venturi on my lead pipe to match more of like my Bach lead pipe.
Sure.
Versus my Charlie Melk E flat, where it's his lead pipe, but the venturi again is similar to my B flat and my C, and so I get those things. But let me I'll play a little bit of a American in Paris.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
Right.
But if you're talking West Side Story, let me go grab that horn.
Yeah.
I'll play a little bit of West Side Story.
Yeah.
This would be an example of what I would use for West Side Story. For me, it'd be my commercial backbore with my medium cup, V cup.
Okay.
So this is very commercial. This is what works for me. If somebody can't play a V cup shape, if that's too extreme, which it is for a lot of classical players, I would recommend our Pop series. Our Pop series is a medium shallow bowl cup.
Okay.
So, And you can pair it up with the classical backbore as a one piece, and that's good for E flat playing and a lot of, where you just need a little bit of a bump for your pops playing.
Sure.
But if you were going to use it for piccolo, I would just get the top
Okay.
and made it up with a cornet backbore or a short shank trumpet backbore. If you had to play Brandenburg, if you had to do something like that, and you can't play the V-shape setup. Personally, I think if you can play the V-shape back cup shape, that's such a great supportive thing because it goes straight down and then over, so it gives you room if you're swelling. It gives you room for your chops, but it gives you cup volume at the top, and then the bottom comes over and you have less of a bottom, so you have that's where there's less volume.
Right.
But you've given your chops room, so you can articulate and all of those things.
Right.
So here's an example of West Side Story. It's not easy.
Right.
So what you're being asked to do is play something orchestral and then play, a medley of Bernstein after that. That's crazy. And that's really difficult for us to do. That's why the old adage of playing everything on one mouthpiece, it kind of falls apart with where we are as a society today and what the demands that have been being placed more and more on a first trumpet player.
Right.
For whether it's a commercial player playing more classical material or a classical player playing more commercial material. So
if you're the kind of trumpet player who's doing this kind of work and doing that kind of thing, chances are you're probably getting called for your best friend's wedding too, right? In which they say, "Hey, I'm getting married. You play a little trumpet, right? Do you think maybe you could come play my wedding? You think we can do that? And then they call for something ridiculous or some sort of like piccolo literature or something else like that. What'd you recommend for the player who's kind of got to get through some sort of a fanfare or get through something like that, just enough for a wedding gig? What do you suggest for that?
Well, that's excessively difficult for me as well because you'll be playing almost the whole prelude on flugelhorn, big mouthpiece, or maybe C, and playing with one violinist and organ, and you're playing like second violin parts or whatever. So that's has its own set of difficulties. Personally, I like, because you have so much resistance with the piccolo itself. I like having a little bit more room. This is where I actually use a bigger mouthpiece on top, not the inner diameter. The inner diameter is still kind of shaped to my teeth and my lips. Again, that's the size, matching up a size like a shoe size.
Right.
But I use a conventional bowl shape, and it's pretty deep. It's closer to a C cup than a shallow cup.
Okay.
If I have to play Brandenburg, which has come up a couple times for friends' weddings, and that's a whole different deal. Again, you're to the pops top at the very minimum. For me, I'm to like a commercial, top mated to a short shank trumpet backbore, and if I use a really shallow top, I'll use a more open backbore.
Okay.
To kind of balance it out.
Sure.
That's going to be very individual for people. With my bigger top, more cut volume, a little bit bigger mouthpiece, I'll use my smaller backbore, my tighter backbore.
Gotcha.
You might want to just save doing the whole thing. We can practice that and do it a million times at home. But when you're on a wedding and you played a bunch of flugel or a bunch of other things, and you pick this up and you didn't have any other piccolo pieces, and now it's announcing the bride come down the aisle, it's my 2 cents that maybe simplify it. Maybe do a shortened version, because you're just hung out and you're going straight into the bride coming down the aisle.
Oh yeah.
That's the last thing you want to wreck.
Right.
So
right. Well, good. Well, thank you for all that advice and all the different talks about the mouthpieces. If this is kind of you, right? If this is your style of playing, if you find yourself with these demands, we really encourage you to go to patrickmouthpieces.com. There's all of these mouthpieces that he just played here. They're available for purchase. You can read about them. Many of them actually have little videos too that you have done describing each mouthpiece and kind of the unique characteristics to try and get you guys fitted up with what you need. If you have questions, you can email. There's a link for that in there too. Steve, thanks so much for sitting down with us and talking with us and giving us some new information. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks.